So Billy Collins was poet laureate of the U.S. from like 2001 to 2003, and I just want to make a quick comment about something he said. What he said in this video, pretty much like how to write poetry. His statement was that if you want to read poetry, if you want to write poetry, the key is to read a lot of poetry for like. And he said, I'm not sure how serious he was, but he said like 10,000 hours you have to read poetry to be good at it. And to some extent, I agree with him there that you have to, if you want to excel at something, you have to internalize really the language of that art form. But the problem I have with this is he's pretty like he thinks that you have to be familiar with the older poetry that came before, and that this is pretty much the only way you can get good at writing poetry in the future. But the problem is that this is just something I'm adding in, that there are other forms of art and other experiences that can shape your writing besides the same genre of poetry. There, like, you can look at rap lyrics, you can look at song lyrics, you can look at just how you feel walking outside, or like the experiences you have, or watching other forms of art like movies or films, even video games. You can get inspired from playing those, but like with stuff that's copyrighted, you don't want to just copy it directly. You have to transform it into something new so you don't get in trouble for that, like plagiarism. But it's good to take inspiration. That's different from just ripping something off. But I think, yeah, he compares this to how you can take lessons with and be good at like the cello, but I think that it's poetry is slightly different because anyone can just pick up a piece of paper and write, and he does mention this, but he said that you probably won't be very good unless you really internalize this classical poetry tradition. And this is something I disagree with very strongly, because I think that as I said before, like all those reasons I listed before, there are other forms of art that you can internalize and translate that into poetry and transform the art form into something new. You don't want to make it stale. If all you do is study the old stuff, your work will be pretty stale and conventional. And he mentions Wordsworth and Milton, who are good poets in their time, but people need to embrace new and more interesting ideas than what becomes cliche, I guess. And yeah, I also agree with what he said about internalizing English words if you want to take poetry seriously. Like, for example, like Eminem, the rapper, he collects a lot of words and phrases and ideas before he puts into a song, and like he has like a huge like box of like all the things he wrote down, and then he keeps the good stuff into his lyrics. And I think poets should have that same idea and like carry that forward of like having a lot of extra material, not necessarily all the stuff they'll keep, but and that really helps you to get familiarized with the way words work and the way the art form works. And the next thing he said, if you don't want to take poetry seriously by internalizing all this old poetry, no one will read it, basically. But I think his logic is kind of faulty, because like everyone's voice is important, and on top of that, there are other ways to get good at poetry besides reading the old stuff, and I've already said that. And this is the last thing I want to comment on. If anyone comes along and they haven't checked into the history of poetry and what they're into, and they just announce themselves, what they usually end up looking like is a jackass. And that's a quote from Billy Collins here. And I disagree with that because, for example, Walt Whitman, he just like his poetry was universally panned at the beginning. He sold like 12 copies of Leaves of Grass, the first edition, before he produced his next edition. And like I guess this relates to people's internalized ideas of what they want to read, and like sort of relates to their emotions and what emotional state someone's in. But you could be ahead of your time a lot of the times, and like you don't want to get stuck in. This is where the fundamental disagreement with him here is, you don't want to get stuck in the idea that you have to follow these old cliche conventions. You want to break out. You want to transform the art form. You want to keep moving it forward. You want to add your unique voice to it. And he said, the last thing he said, reading is really the answer. And I agree with that, but I'd add to it that listening, experiencing, going out and doing things around the world, seeing new places, talking to new people, reading new books, not just poetry books, but all kinds of books, like fiction books, non-fiction books, even books about like astronomy. I mean, like things that have nothing to do with language. They can still inspire you because you find out how wonderful this entire human experience is, and it makes you want to go out and experience more things and share that with people, that unique aspect. And that's pretty much all he said in this video, and that's just my commentary. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too long, but I'm not sure how long this video is going to be. But thank you for listening.